The emerald energy pouring out from the North Pole is the heart essence that has been put under the toroidal compression field. This compression field is not the imposition of some dictatorial force in another dimension, but is the result of us deciding to abandon the heart space in our perception, to channel ourselves holographically into a game of fragmentation. In this system, the mind and spirit have had the opportunity to live within judgments, comparisons, labels, us versus them scenarios, and the product has been an external reality hexed with systems void of true empathy, wisdom, ease, and sustainability. Everything here decays, everything here requires maintenance. The structures in place are inverted. This isn't because of evil or others inflicting this damage on a slave population, but rather this is what happens when love itself is ignored as a means, as a tool to teach us the pain of splitting away from the emerald green energy, the life-giving vril, which is regenerative, creative, expansive. The love you withhold is the pain you carry. We fell into chaos. This is the story of Sophia, who bound herself to matter, like Dorothy, who got swept away by the tornado, like Alice, who fell into the rabbit hole. Yes, we fell into chaos, and because of this, we've had to struggle through our own personal and collective labyrinths, which have reflected back to us our manifestations of dualism. Every situation you've gone through, every person in your life, every trauma, every breakthrough and breakdown has been a part of a divinely orchestrated movie meant to guide you towards the reclamation of a balanced perspective. A series of events purging you of the very experiences you've been living. It seems paradoxical, but every step you've taken has brought you closer to the emerald light through suffering. After all, we must live out our imbalances in order to stare them in the face. By simply being in this temporary holding space, you've been undergoing the process of alchemy, of transmutation, and you didn't even know it. The common idea of spiritual growth is that there are certain principles of purity one must adhere to. These concepts of good, of righteousness, still rely on the opposing concepts of bad, of evil, of spiritual impurity. This is all a farce. You are the power and always have been, and there is nothing more relevant to your growth than your experiences. We call these principles of purity the false light because they are still operating within the realm of dualism. In the age of duality, spirituality was seen as separate and distinct from physicality. But the unveiling has been quickening, and now we know the spiritual and the physical have always been intertwined, and the separation of the two were only observed due to our own inability to reconcile the shadows we chose to dive into once upon a time. You hold the keys to your own cell, and you've been slowly unlocking your own infinite nature as you wade through the bullshit, even if you haven't been conscious of it. What a relief, right? We've been living in a prison of our own creation. The toroidal field will have no relevance once the full shift occurs, which is not necessarily some fantastical event. The shift will be the return to the center. This hologram we've been immersed in will have ran its course, and we will essentially wake up at the center. This may sound too bizarre or magical for some people to digest. That's fine. Just remember, as I've stated in my last video and many other videos, the 0 point has created the toroidal structure. The same way the 0 point pulses electromagnetic energy to the outskirts of the field but never leaves, the same is true for ourselves. We have never left the North Pole. Every true aspect of reality has a counterpart in another, quote, higher existence, meaning the fact that the living souls exist here means there's an upgraded version of ourselves dreaming this, quote, lower version. What we currently see on the screen is the buildup of all of the manifestations and karma we have released. This is why everything appears to have gotten worse and worse, more and more polarized, more and more, well, insane. It's not because this realm is aiming to lock itself down, or that evil reigns. What we see is the residual result, the accumulation of all of the aspects of consciousness we have rid ourselves of over the many incarnations we've experienced. This is why it's important to consistently remind ourselves, not everything is as it seems. I get it. Things can seem confusing, hopeless, and downright cruel. But be glad that your environment is reflecting back to you all of the components of anti-wisdom, of anti-truth that you wish to disconnect from. Wisdom requires sacrifice because growth cannot occur if the same conditions are always taken on. Expansion, therefore, occurs when one mingles with conditions that were previously unexperienced. Philosophers and spiritualists have always asked the questions: what is life? How did we get here? And what can one do to liberate themselves from the human condition? The problem is, we've gotten caught up in the how and the what rather than the why. Open up any religious doctrine or philosophical work, most of which were written in the Iron Age, and you will see long-winded explanations and verbose psychobabble, aiming to define life in such complex terms that it misses the simple truth. The simple truth is, everything has been in perpetual motion using experience as the catalyst for growth, regardless of how painful that growth has felt. And because this game is reaching its end, everything will soon go back to its original state, unharmed, unscathed. Our current situation and timeline is no different than the basic structure of fairy tales and heroic stories. In fairy tales, the good guys, who are typically free-spirited, get involved in some conflict imposed by an evil character or tyrannical force. Their dreams and goals of peace, of exploration, are halted by this force. The evil character might have an army of clones, or soldiers, representing a force that uses fear, manipulation, and intimidation. Trials and tribulations ensue, and when everything seems hopeless, it's revealed that the evil can actually be easily vanquished, that no amount of oppression can stand in the face of truth and courage. The good guys, they live happily ever after. This is often symbolized at the end by love, by the feminine and masculine joining hands. This love no longer stands in the face of an opposing force. Happily ever after is where we're headed. This has simply been once upon a time, because time is what has kept us locked into this holographic holding space. Speaking of time, it's a figment, and fundamental to this apocalyptic process is to recognize that time has no relevance. There is only a here and now moment, ever unfolding, ever changing, because of movement in the now. Clocks, calendars, schedules, dates, these all take us away from this eternal now moment into the past or future. And if you're not existing right here, then where are you? One could say nowhere. You're existing in a representation of a now moment when you're adhering to the past or future, in illusion. Society has taught us that we live along some invisible line, and that it holds some invaluable currency that we must spend wisely. After all, time is money. Time is valuable, right? Wrong. The adherence to time is the manifestation of a scarcity-based consciousness. The Matrix virus works on a process of linearity, where things move in one direction. But I'm informing you, the future isn't impending. The past isn't doomed to affect us now. We can take the responsibility now, right here, to create conditions which can, in essence, cancel out the past and future in order to grow without the restriction of then or there. Everything here is backwards. Yes, everything here is based in scarcity. Yes, everything here requires maintenance. There's always give and take. There's rigidity. Yes, of course, this is squared consciousness. And these are great insights. These reactions are what the Matrix has wanted from you. Again, wisdom requires sacrifice. Now, we're aware of the aspects of consciousness we will never choose to replicate again. When we have these realizations with such intensity, this means we're on the brink of a transformation. None of our suffering has been in vain. Many people feel we live within a sort of prison, although it's been a prison of our own creation.